Awesome. I guess I'm just going to get started here. So I'm going to go with this presentation as more of a case study example about how we've democratized our data and created this data-driven culture here. There's going to be a lot of parallels, and I'll talk to sort of some broader trends of what you could maybe do with your own companies or approaches or any of that sort of stuff while I'm talking about what we've done here. Perfect. So just an agenda is first I'm going to walk you around background, because you may be asking why it's a person from a homeless foundation talking about data. I'm going to then talk around the idea of, what is a decision maker, data democratization itself, what the impacts from that are, and even just what our future plans are and what our roadmap's kind of looking like. So first, the background. Why am I here? So quickly, I'm just going to actually introduce you to what Calgary Homeless Foundation does. So we're a funder of programs. So we don't run frontline services. We determine where funding should go to best support people that are experiencing homelessness. So we actually work with 23 different agencies and 57 programs. So these are external organizations that we provide the budgets to, and they have a multitude of programs that can range from supportive housing, where an individual is supported in a rent subsidized housing unit, to outreach, which could be to even do encampment teams. So those you see them see it even more and more in the news these days across North America, of people experiencing homelessness and tents. So we have a broad range of supports. And we actually run an HMIS team. So one of the two teams I manage here runs the Homeless Management Information Services system here. So it's very comparable to sort of an electronic medical records or a CRM. And from last fiscal year, so we used the government fiscal year, we had information on 12,000 individuals and over 350,000 episodes or experiences within our sector and serving our system sector here. So that's not individual stays in shelters, for example, but it could be groups in that, or it could be their intake into housing programs and so on and so forth. And last, since we're always curious around in this world what our sort of data stack is, we're running it mostly on Azure. So we have sort of Data Factory coordinating the whole jam, running some Databricks, just doing some ETL, Azure ML for sort of exploratory modeling. And we're just running the SQL Managed instance in Azure as sort of a database and data warehouse where we're storing it all in addition to the blob storage there. Languages that we run are SQL and Python. So most of our ETL is actually, we just do it in SQL, but there is obviously Python, and with exploratory analysis and machine learning, that's sort of pretty handy. So I'm going to talk around challenges to creating a data culture here. And so typically the social sector is not one that you would think that is heavily data driven, and it's a very challenging place to play, but it is the place that you can play, and that's why I'm here, to show you how you can make it work. And so the first challenge I identify would be priorities and capacity. So this isn't a sector that's known, for being, there's not excess capacity. No one's going into this to make it big or to make it rich. And we have a frontline staff that's heavily burdened. There's high turnover. People are working pretty damn hard on a regular basis. And as a result, sort of reporting has been seen as a necessity versus value creating. And so what I mean by that is data itself has been seen as, we need to provide this data to our funder or to the government so that we can get paid. But really, these numbers aren't where we're actually basing our decisions off of. And there's been a lot of efforts to move away from that dynamic, but that dynamic will still exist when push comes to shove. And so you have that sort of historical legacy where value creating data hasn't necessarily been seen. In addition, power dynamics. So we're the funder. When it comes to data itself, if you're wielding it like a club over people's heads, there can be some animosity towards it, or the first thing that can happen is, if you try and say, hey, we're looking at, your occupancy levels, what's going on here, and the first thing that people will try and do is challenge your data. So that is going to be, that's just the background and the reality. And the last piece is data literacy. A lot of folks in here come from a social working background where they're becoming, that professional in how to support individuals, very complex individuals. And so data literacy hasn't been the focus. There's a lot of knowledge and experience you need to gain to support these individuals well. That isn't necessarily, there's not excess capacity to be learning, statistics or things like that. And the last thing, which is kind of initially I viewed it as a challenge when I entered this sector, but it's actually quite strengthening, is sensitivity towards any bias. Social workers would be your best people in the world to identify any bias with a data set or a model or any of that sort of stuff. And so initially I was kind of, every time you try and present something or build something, there'd be challenges, or people said, have you accounted for this? And really, that's actually fantastic in refining. So people that may spot out bias, for every data, I'd say this is a point of advice for any person that's working with data out here, they may seem like a pain, but your biggest critics are going to help you refine your work pretty damn well. So that's just a bit of a background. So before I go into the technical piece or what we're actually doing here, I really want to just flag sort of the definition of a decision maker and really where data plays for that. When we classically think of, when we're building our analytics stack, we're producing data for an audience, the first person we're always thinking about is leadership. They're the ones that are providing you the budget. They're usually we usually have one advocate at least, if not all, that have given you the budget and the strategic vision for establishing data at your organization. And so we always think about leadership being the first audience and that classic decision maker. And it's the same here. We also have a system planning team. So these are the teams that are deciding funding. So who's going to, how much money are we going to be allocating to different programs? Do programs need to be ramping up funding? All that sort of stuff. Those are the obvious decision makers. And so just doing some basic math here, in our organization, including external agency leadership, who is an audience as well, in our system planning team, sits across that 26 agencies and ourselves, we have 32 decision makers. So, you start your analytics stack, you're building your audience, you initially think these 32. But I want to actually challenge that, and top down or is not the way to create a data-driven culture. If you are providing information to your leadership or to the key decision makers within a division alone, you're not actually going to fully shift the data culture. A data culture is actually when you shift it to frontline staff. Our frontline staff looking at the data to help inform their decisions. Are they using it to, when the challenges arise, do they have a data-driven evidence approach that they can rely on? And so that's where we really expanded this to. In addition, these agencies that we work, they have their own evaluative minds. They have either direct people that are employed in the sphere of evaluation, or they're data analysts at other agencies. And so they're also decision makers. And so right now we've expanded that to 112 additional people. These were just immediately identified. We know there's more in our sector, but we've gone from 32 to 112 additional. So that's what, 144. So a nearly quadrupling of, where's that more? You think I'd be better with math. But we've massively expanded the amount of people that can make decisions based around data just by actually challenging that classic definition of a decision maker. So data democratization. So we've identified that actually decision makers aren't just your leadership or a few key individuals. They're your whole organization. And so what we've done here As the first thing first is community dashboard. So you're using whatever BI tool you're using. So we're using ClickSense, Tableau, Power BI, whatever you want to approach it with. You need to make sure that people that are, if whoever's making decisions, which once again should be your whole organization if you want to have a data-driven culture, has the data that they need at their fingertips. So before you even get into the sort of the predictive analytics or any of that sort of stuff, just getting the what in front of people's hands and making it transparent will help there. And so initially for us, we launched just direct dashboards on people's programs themselves. We added some sector level data and some data quality. And I'll get back to the data quality point in a second as sort of a benefit of data democratization. And really expanded that audience. So initially we provide KPIs or just quarterly reports to external agencies, so primarily to the program managers. But it's the caseworkers themselves that are interacting with our HMI system. So it's going to be in the sales world, it's going to be your frontline sales staff that are interacting with your CRM on a daily basis. If they don't have the data, or if they need to filter through their manager to access some valuable data, inherently they can't become data driven to the extent that we'd want them to be. So really wanted to expand access to as many as possible. And we operate under the basis that if somebody has access or has HMIS access, we'll give them access to these dashboards. Next thing is enriching data. And so the classic thing is, you put up a few KPIs, this is how performance is going and all that stuff. But really, we want to give them as much access as possible. We even go to the point where we share raw data. Now, we do validate data literacy before doing so, but we've expanded so that way folks can get the raw data. So they don't just have our KPIs or visualizations. They have the calculation methods. So those have to be transparent as part of your data governance. And really, that's going to help people grow people's data literacy, but providing them the raw data themselves, because they may actually have some calculations that, or thoughts for calculations that may not match with your existing definitions. And they could actually be pretty damn interesting metrics that they can come up with. And the other thing was building data quality. Data quality, it's the unsexy nature of the work that we do, but it's essential. As soon as you have a data quality issue, your whole thing can be thrown out of whack. I can speak from experience that, in previous times when, I sort of glossed over or thought, this data seems relatively good, few checks, it seems okay, let's pump it out, and then have a presentation to somebody and they instantly spot out a data quality mistake or a data quality issue, and you're sunk. And so we wanted to make sure that those that are entering the data, they're getting that direct feedback right away if the data is accurate or not, or if the quality is there. And so those are just the direct efforts that we took around data democratization. And I'll talk a bit more in the future around or not the future, upcoming about what we're going to be doing more in the future. But sort of let's dive into the impacts of what happens. So first, for us, it's really essential is outlier detection. So I'm using the technical term here, but I really want to bring it down to what that means in our lens, which is people. So an outlier in our world is an individual. And so if we're detecting something's going concerning or a different pattern there, by identifying that, we can make an intervention and really impact a person's life. And so, you can run your own models, you can run your own, use machine learning of lots of sorts to do outlier detection. But there still can be subject matter experts that are going to be able to identify things in addition to your models and leverage that subject matter expertise. And then you can build models around that. And so we've already started to build more flags or more indicators or email automated alerts when we do identify something as a stray. Data quality improvement. So the efforts we spent there, identification of issues timeline. So we're automating that now. So it's 98%. So before it was, or up to 98%, I should say. Before, we could push back on a quarterly basis. Here's your data quality issues to external agencies. Now it's automated, it's in their hand, they're getting alerts. And we've reduced even the incoming issues by 58%. So that's been massive. User feedback, refining data. And so user feedback is essential. Effectively, as data practitioners, our ultimate goal is to communicate information to folks. And so if it's not a bi-directional communication, you're never going to, one-way communication is just less effective, plain and simple. We're able to create discussions around data asset improvements. And so the feedback that we receive from users directly goes into even data model refining. And what does this mean for a data-driven culture? Number one, we've noticed a marked shift. So conversations start with data. So before, it would really kind of initially start around, hey, here's your KPI number, and then a program or an agency might go, oh, but these caveats are why this number is not accurate, and you'd be bogged down in these pieces there. And so now it's, hey, we noticed, we've got the exact same numbers in front of us. Let's talk around that piece. How do we shift and how do we improve our number versus how do we explain the number? Ingesting more data. It's success breeds more demand when it comes to data. And so we're now ingesting more data than we used to because people see the value in bringing it into this model and having it pushed back to them, or hey, this is a reality that we're facing that your data set doesn't have. Here's our data that can supplement yours. And then better qualitative insights. And so, it's the classic quantitative versus qualitative. And really it's a balance, but they need to play well together and they both actually inform each other. And so the qualitative should be informing where your data should be looking at. And vice versa as well. Your quantitative should be saying, hey, what's going on here? So that way people can drive those qualitative discussions. And so it creates a really strong positive feedback loop there. And really this is a term that's, maybe not used too often in the data world, but it's used a lot in the social sector world of a social learning system. And so until people are on the same page, when it comes to data access or any of that, you're going to be inherently limiting the amount of brains that can come to play. And so we wanted to shift from this top-down approach that we used to have, where here's your numbers or any of that sort of stuff, to peer-to-peer. Here's your data. What are you seeing in it that we're not seeing? How can we spread the practices from one agency to another without us sort of playing this authoritative role in it? And the other thing is transparency. Inherently, when it comes to numbers, you don't want to be bogged down in those questions of how are these numbers being derived or any of that sort of stuff. Or if the individuals that are being measured aren't actually being involved in that measurement or developing their measurement solutions themselves, it's going to be a bit harder to bring on. And so just want to talk sort of the future plans here. And so we're going to further enrich the data. And so this one becomes a bit of a privacy concern, and we have done ethics reviews, but we want to expand so that way individual programs are seeing beyond just their segment. And so what I mean by that is right now Program A can see Program A's data, but what can we do around sharing past program information to Program A? This is a key thing. Individuals can have brief or very long history within our sector. And so having that information right into the frontline staff can really help inform their approach. Further integrating machine learning and time series. And so we've already created a participant journey data model so we can see individuals' trends throughout, but we really want to operationalize this and start kind of using, cohort analysis or any of those sorts of things to create warning systems. When is somebody's journey leading them to a path of a very negative outcome? So how can we intervene? Where are we seeing that program gaps aren't there, so that way either the programs themselves can intervene or we can intervene from a funder perspective. And the last thing is around that data literacy piece. So we've launched an LMS. We're looking to really train and provide that capacity to frontline staff around data literacy. And we're providing the raw data themselves, but as we expand data literacy, we're really looking at embracing that hub and spoke model to really empower the agencies to build their own data assets in addition to what we've already built. And so this is kind of that key piece. If we've democratized the raw data, but if we can democratize the tools as well, that just further enhances the culture. So to wrap it up, the main thing that I started from was, challenging what is that definition of a decision maker. If you want to be a data-driven culture, you need to challenge that definition, and you need to realize that in most settings, everyone is a decision maker. Depends on what decision they're making, but people make decisions every single day. You need to give them the data that can enable them to make be informed decisions. It actually creates positive feedback loops in a way that it greatly improves your data itself, which further increases that data culture and allows you to build data into directions you didn't think of initially. And it does require further reinforcing. It's not a set it and forget it. You need to keep the fuel to the fire and those positive feedback loops going. But that is our path, and that's what we're going down. So I'd like to just thanks everyone for listening in, and I will stop sharing my screen.